Hello, everyone. I'm James McQuibby, and I want to thank you for, watching the videos that I have been producing and sharing in my journey of learning how to fire my musket. It has been an incredibly humbling experience on all kinds of levels. I'm outside of my depth. I'm doing something I don't really know much about. I really wouldn't be able to do it without your input. I have just grown in leaps and bounds based on your feedback. In fact, the last video I posted about the shooting patched ball for the first time, I posted it late one night, went to bed, got up the next morning, did some things, and then finally sat down to see how it was doing. And I saw a dozen already useful, valuable, generous comments from people saying, here's something to think about, here's an extra thing to consider, ball size, or here's how to lubricate properly, or thank you. You don't expect a lot of social media these days to be filled with people who have this much knowledge and are willing to share it with a newbie without being condescending or just being a jerk. You have really shown who you are. And this is going to connect to the purpose of this video. So I have hinted in the last two videos that I have a topic I want to bring up that's a little uncomfortable. I said inflammatory before, but I've been thinking about it since then, and I've kind of rethought it in my mind. And I'll share some of that rethinking in this video. It's more that it's uncomfortable. And really, when I sat down and got honest with myself, it's uncomfortable for me. And I'm going to have to confess and apologize about something. And I'll do that in just a moment. What you're about to see, instead of watching me talk from my basement office, usually I'm out on the range or in the garage or something. But today I'm going to share with you video of me assembling cartridges. I sat down one day to just do, 50, 60 cartridges so that I'd have a bunch on hand whenever I want to go shoot. And I'll narrate some of that for those of you interested in the way I've been assembling the cartridges at this point. I haven't made the perfect cartridge yet. I will yet. I have plans. I have materials coming. And when I do that, I will make a video just about making the perfect cartridge. But for now, this is just video of me assembling cartridge. You can see the way I'm doing it. And any tips you have on that, of course, are welcome. But really, the purpose of that video is just so that I have something over which I can narrate. So I'll narrate a little bit of what I'm doing, but then I'm going to add the story that I want to tell. And I hope that you will find it interesting, informative. It's a very honest thing for me to say about myself. And, well, why don't we get started? You're looking at my typical setup. In this case, I've got the papers that I have cut from the newsprint that I've been using more recently. And you're looking at, the ball up there. I got my powder horn there mostly for decoration. The truth is I haven't really been using it so much, but it looks cool and I want to get there, so it's aspirational. You're also seeing that I didn't have a lot of twine, and so I used what we had left of this kind of fancy Christmas package wrapping twine. It was actually pretty good weight, even though it looks thicker than it really is. You're seeing the way I roll. So this is straight out of the pattern that I got when I bought the kit from Jefferson Arsenal, which I've talked about before. I'm using the same size of template for the paper cutouts. I'm using the same method of rolling the paper partway around the dowel and then pushing the paper down in to create a separation between where the ball is going to sit, which I'm going to put in right now, and then on the other side, after you remove the dowel, and put the powder down on that side. So you'll see all of that happening here. One of the things I'm finding about the newsprint, and I don't know if this is true about using actual newspaper, I am going to try that, that this newsprint is pretty lightweight, and when you try to choke it using this choke cord method, which I know not everyone uses the choke cord, and I, in some cases, haven't used it myself, it can tear. So I have to be a little tender or gentle with it. Anyway, then you tie it up, and eventually I think I'm going to cut those strings later. I don't remember exactly, but there's a lot of extra string there. I use about a 6-inch length. That's what Jefferson Arsenal recommends, and seems like a fine length, but it does mean that you do a lot of trimming, which is an extra step, but it is a lot easier to tie. Oh, here I go. I'm going to trim it right now. It is a lot easier to tie when it's that long. But if you were someone living on the frontier or in revolutionary New England, you probably wouldn't have had so much twine to waste like that. I don't know. So there you go. That's where you're going to see that the ball is now protected by a folded over paper. It can't fall out this direction. And I make a bunch of these. You make these first because it's going to take some time to get enough of them up that then you go through the process of assembly line of adding the powder. So that's what I'm going to keep doing here in the background. If I see anything else interesting that happens, I might pause what I'm narrating in order to talk about it. You'll see a couple of mistakes along the way. That's all part of the process for me. What I want to talk about today is something that I was actually originally going to title this video Muslims and Muskets. And I was going to tell a little more of a story about my own personal background with the biases that I have about Islam and Muslims, and purely for allegory reasons, meaning that I was going to say, like, look, I grew up with a very positive perception of Islam, and it wasn't until 9/11 that I realized that I was probably alone in that perception. And then we saw over the next 10 years during the Iraq War and all that came after that there was, in the broader U.S., there was a more negative feeling about Muslims, assuming that, Muslims were trying to hurt us as people. So I was going to title this video Muslims and Muskets because I wanted to make a comparison between that lazy stereotyping that I think we're all capable of, where I was basically going to say, hey, look inside yourself and see if you have something about Muslims that you are fundamentally bothered by, and then examine whether that's justifiable or not, because it's really not. There's 3.5 million Muslims in the United States, and since 9/11, I have these data points written down in detail in a Substack post that goes along with this video. It goes quite a different direction and much more detail. You don't have to read that. In fact, it's going to be quite different because it's not really so much about the musket fire. It's more about thinking about guns, and I use the Muslim question as an example of an area where someone might think, oh, I had this negative feeling about Muslims in America, and it's justified because of 9/11. And 9/11 is terrible. Thousands of people were needlessly killed, and the people responsible were evil and should be punished. I don't have any concerns feeling that about those people, but I do get concerned when people feel that way about Muslims in general and American Muslims in particular. All the research suggests that American Muslims don't agree with those notions, and in fact, the FBI, with 2 decades now of tracking down Muslim extremists in the United States, has only, I believe, arrested what was the number? I apologize. It's in the Substack post, but we're talking about perhaps a few hundred people in the last 20 years associated with different terror plots, some of them which were carried out and some of them which were prevented before they were carried out. And the good news is that only 140 people have been killed in those attacks in the 20 years since 9/11. And in fact, the rate at which those plots are happening and those harms are being caused is going down since 2015. So basically, I want to say this. If people have negative feelings about Muslims because of 9/11, they should have negative feelings about the people who did that thing, not about Muslims in general. And the whole reason why I wanted to call this video Muslims and Muskets is that the reason I am saying that is because I have been on the other side of that question when it comes to gun owners in the United States for most of my life. So in these videos, I have been very honest with you about my lack of experience with guns. That as an adult, I've never owned one. I only went through this process of getting a license to carry in Massachusetts, this year. And the musket is the only firearm I still have ever owned in my entire adult life. And I've shared that with you, and you've all been very kind to try to guide me. I mean, I think I know some basics about hunter safety. I did take hunter safety when I was 12, but I didn't really get a lot of training, the kind of training you would get if you were out shooting with your uncles or hunting with your dad, and they would say, like, oh, you can see there, I ended up tearing the paper on that one, so I have to throw it out and start over. Anyway, I guess I didn't do that in that case. I guess I decided that hole was okay. Interesting. All right. Anyway, if I had grown up doing all of those things and carrying around weapons and being around people who were constantly correcting me and telling me like, no, don't point it like that, don't hold it like that, I wouldn't be making some of the mistakes that I'm making now. And that's one of the things I'm grateful for, is that you all have been guiding me and telling me like, hey, don't do this, don't do that. You're making some obvious rookie mistakes. And I own it. I own it. Those are all my mistakes. But the issue is, I didn't just come here to overcome my lack of knowledge or my mistakes. Oh, okay, there's the one I need to throw away. You can see that one. I had to throw away the paper and start over on that one. Anyway, I also came here because I felt like I needed to humble myself and reevaluate how I feel about guns and gun owners specifically. Now, in the essay that I wrote on Substack, which is linked below, you're welcome to go read it. I go into some detail about my own personal history with guns and the decision I came to early on in my life that guns weren't for me. And I wish I could just say that I just made this rational decision to say, hey, you know what? Guns are for some people, fine, but they aren't for me, fine. But I got to be honest, I didn't. And as I wrote in the essay, and as I'm trying to find every possible way to avoid telling you, but I owe it to you, so I'm going to tell you. I started to think less about people who were into guns. And I just feel really sick about that now because, as I've said, I've joined a gun club. I went to, firearm safety classes mandated by the state. I've interacted with so many people and gone back to many of my friends and family members who are into guns and have different firearms. And I've asked them for advice, and some of them have gone shooting with me, and it's been great. And the whole time I have done this, I have realized that I don't know that I made it conscious as much as just in the back of my head, I was thinking, all these gun people, they could be good people, fine. Like, I don't think you're a bad person because you have a gun. But I think I believed that you would be a better person if you didn't have a gun. And it just feels sick to say it because, like I said, in all of my interactions with all of you, with all of the people who've been responding to any of my videos, or as I said, out on the range with other shooters, all I have had is positive experiences. Even in the class that I took, the firearm safety class, which there were 24 different people in that class from different races, different countries of origin. It was a very mixed group, all very positive. Like, at no point have I had anyone in any interaction that has made me feel like, yep, my negative stereotype, my lazy stereotype about gun owners that I evidently carried for decades of my life is really true. And that's been humbling. So I apologize. I'm sorry that without realizing that I was missing the opportunity to associate with and befriend people like those of you who've been helping me out on this channel, I fell into lazy stereotyping. Now, the reason why I brought up the Muslim thing is because that's a type of lazy stereotyping. Like, you look at something small and in your mind you say, oh, that's a really bad problem. Those Muslims, they're the reason. But you could almost say it this way. Muslims don't kill people. Terrorists kill people. And the reason I say it that way is, purely aligned with the classic, gun rights statement about guns don't kill people, people kill people, which I'm about to say, when I did that Muslim analysis of like 3.5 million Muslims in the country, several hundred incidents in the last 20 years that have resulted in a small number of terrible deaths, but a small number nonetheless. So if Muslims are trying to harm Americans, Muslim Americans are trying to harm other Americans, they're really bad at it. They're so bad at it that it's really worth examining whether Muslims are really the problem that some people think they are. And I set that up purely because I'm on the other side of that. If guns are really bad, and gun owners, therefore, by extension, are really bad. Now, I haven't thought that they're really bad. I've just thought that they're less good, which maybe is a shade of meaning that I shouldn't take too much refuge in. But the fact is, I have thought, all these gun things happen because people insist on having guns. And now I'm to the point where I realize I got to do the same kind of math. So there are 400 million legal firearms in the United States, and there are tens of thousands of gun-related deaths in the United States every year. That ends up being something like 0.25% of firearms that are involved in fatalities in any given year in the United States. So if guns are bad, they're terrible at it. I mean, if guns magically, automatically just kill people by their mere existence, they're really, really ineffective at it. And as I say in my essay, if guns are really directly connected to these harms, then over the last 10 years, really since the Obama administration, where about 100 million guns, if I've got my numbers right, have been added to the legal firearm base in the country, well, then we should have seen a 33% increase in gun harms and gun deaths, which we haven't seen. And in fact, this, completely avoids the fact that there are a lot of illegal guns that are responsible for most of those non-suicide deaths that make up part of the overall figure of about 40,000 firearm-related deaths in the country every year. So, yeah, I've been a lazy stereotyper. I have judged you wrongly. I shouldn't have done that, and I'm really sorry. And I appreciate you welcoming me into your community through this kind of back door of primitive firearms. And it's encouraged me to see that, at my age, I'm 53 years old, that I, as an old dog, I can still learn some new tricks, and I can still learn to respect people in a way that is a little liberating. Really quickly here, I realize I've been having you watch the first part of the cartridge assembly process, and I thought I'd just quickly insert the next stage once you got all those cartridges ready to go. So you're looking at me assemble my powder and my powder flask, I guess, or powder measure. And so I'm going to be using 110 grains, and I'm still learning to not confuse grains with granules, but grains is a measure. You can see the tube fill up. I'm doing this kind of dirty. I apologize if this offends anyone. I've got, just doing it, eyeballing it. I've got a piece of paper there to catch all the extra powder. But what you see me there is measuring it out, 110 grains. Now, 10 of those grains are going to go into the priming pan in a typical configuration. Now, this is the way I've been folding the papers lately in such a way so that I can crease them. And then, I guess I don't show you in this particular set. Yeah, I did. So you see no, I didn't show you. Okay, what I'm going to show you when I do the perfect one is I'm going to show you that you can tuck that little piece of paper into the folds of the rest of the cartridge, which keeps it a little tidier. That to me is like the nice finishing part of the process. Okay, so this video will keep playing in the background. You'll see me spill a lot of powder, and then I'm just going to be able to pour that powder right back into the container using that paper as a kind of funnel. Okay, that's where I am. Let me get back to my story. When I said that it was inflammatory, I think it's because I intended to talk more about all the other things that we do to lazy stereotype. Like, it is possible to lazily stereotype gun control people too. The gun control side and say like, oh, they're dumb because of this and this and this. And, that's not any healthier. I don't want to go there. In fact, my conversations with the men at my gun club, with my buddies that have gone shooting with me or whatever, they're all very reasonable about the risks of guns, about the feasibility of gun control. And I think that's all very important, that we be able to talk about these things. And, I don't think I'm going to join the NRA anytime soon. And, but here's the important thing. I no longer think less of you for you being a member of the NRA. And that sounds so patronizing because it sounds like I'm so generous to say that. But all I'm doing is just coming completely clean about my own weaknesses and faults in this case, and just telling you I aim to improve. And maybe the word aim just came out of my mouth right now as a Freudian slip, but I welcome that slip because I have learned a lot. I have so much more to learn about this weapon, about other weapons. Tomorrow, I'm actually going to go out to not tomorrow, Saturday, I'm actually going to go out into the Springfield Armory. Those of you who are, gun history buffs, which is many of you, you will know the meaning of the Springfield Armory. This is the armory that was commissioned in 1777 by George Washington to make armaments, including the first, American government-made arms, which were used in the Revolutionary War. I'm going to go out there. There's still some buildings that not the original stuff, but of course, Springfield as well is where the Springfield 1903 rifle was produced that was used so much through World War I. And I'm talking to you about this stuff as if, oh yeah, we all know this. Well, I only recently know this because I only recently have given myself permission to be open-minded enough to talk about this stuff and research it, and I find it so fascinating. So, my last expression of gratitude to you for your generosity, and for me, and I write about this in the essay, I want to be less of a lazy stereotype in every dimension, and this is just such a good area for me to learn this, and I couldn't really be doing it without your help. So thank you for that. Any comments you want to add, please do. Any journeys that you're on of learning how to be more open to other people's ways of thinking. I mean, you don't have to come to admire and respect people that you previously had lazy stereotypes about. I'm doing that in this case. I'm finding myself doing that, but you don't have to. You could come to a point where you say, you know what, I'm not going to be lazy in my stereotyping of that particular group, but I still have some significant disagreements with how they do things and what they're doing. And so that's all normal. That's appropriate. So we're all trying to make our way through this crazy world, and you are all kind enough to let me do this with your help. So thank you all very much. The next couple of videos, as I said, Springfield Armory. I am going to try to do some more patch ball shooting. I've got, I think, 71 caliber balls coming in the mail next week. So I'll be shooting those the weekend after, hopefully. Very soon, I'm going to start working on some period clothing as well, and I'll try to share some of that with you. This is a whole area. I mean, the weapons are already tricky enough to learn how to use them properly and so on. But man, when you start getting into period clothing, because remember, 1775, we're going to be coming up on the 250th anniversary of that in 2025. So we're just 2 years away from what I think is one of the most important events in the history of the world. And I aim to be fully prepared to celebrate it with my musket, with my period clothing, and just stories that I could sit down and tell someone for days about the courage and strength of those people, and a newfound respect that I have for many of you who have the same ethic of protecting your communities and your families with the firearms that you possess today, something that I have finally come to learn. Thank you very much.